Arco sigma sempona covasio, annevade non tremo di cielo. Arco sigma sempona covasio, il farsi. Dunque, coraggio, oh che festa, questa è la patente di Buccanci il fanciullo mi die. Perché fare? Ti manca. Rispondi. Per usanza, su via ti confondi. Per usanza di pormi il suggello. Questo birbo mi toglie il cervello.
Vengo a fare le sue difese, le legittime pretese, vi vengo a palesare. Silenzio, io son qui per giudicar. Io con buon vanno non condito, vengo qui per testimoni di promesso matrimonio come state di dannar. Là, silenzio, lo vedremo. Il contratto leggeremo, tutto in ordine deve andare. E per colpo che nel caso maldito è cresciuto a tutti i
The plot thickens. The marriage of Figaro and Susanna is threatened by the arrival of Marcellina, who claims that she has a contract with Figaro in which he promised to marry her. Our principals: Catherine Gambaroni as Cherubino, Marino Flynn as Susanna, Dean Peterson as Figaro, Elizabeth Hines as the Countess, and William Stone as the Count, here in Act 2 of Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro. Bartolo, sung by Joseph McKee, Basilio, Jonathan Green, Marcellina, Suzanne Marcy, and the gardener Antonio, Don Yule. This performance of Mozart's The Marriage of Figaro, live from Lincoln Center, from the stage of the New York State Theater at New York City's Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. And now, once again, let's go backstage.
Association with Marriage of Figaro goes back clear to your boyhood, I understand.
Well, I was a super at Covent Garden when I was 16. I carried a candelabra. And then I staged Marriage to Sadler's Wells. I danced in it on the tour, John Cranko's choreography. And then I went to Covent Garden where I directed it in the old production. I had to sort of do something with the old production. And I worked with extraordinary people like Gobbi and Söderström, Berganza, Margaret Price debut, Franey, Geraint Evans, of course. And I have a very nice remembrance of Gobbi and Söderström in the scene that we've just seen. They were so accomplished and they rehearsed so marvelously together and they admired each other. We allowed them to do that recitative differently every night. They would never actually, they would just do it. Neither would tell each other what they were going to do.
And they do something different?
Every night. And every night they made each other do something quite daring and extraordinary. And that's the only time that's ever happened in my career. But they were so special.
Yeah.
She also did Susanna, curiously, during that time, because she stood in a very short notice one night for Susanna and sang some of it in Swedish. Yes.
Oh, that's right.
She was so marvelous.
Now, in the number of times that you've been involved in it or seen it, were there any near disasters that you suffered through that haunt you at this time?
We did have one marvelous story at Covent Garden. Before I did my production in '71, I think it was in 1968, and we didn't have a countess. And they found that Joan Ingpen, who was at the Met for many years, discovered that an Irish singer had done it. She'd done it in Italian and knew it. We couldn't find, it was snow on the ground, we couldn't find anybody else. And she agreed to do it, and she came on the boat train. She arrived at lunchtime, and we fitted her in the costume, did the wig, and then we started a little rehearsal. Because Act 2 has to be rehearsed. You can't do Act 2 cold. You have to know where the doors are, you have to know where everybody's hiding. So she started singing. I'd never heard her sing in Italian. She had been at Covent Garden much earlier with Kathleen Ferrier. She'd sung Mimi with Bobby Rowley, but always in English. I'd never heard her sing in Italian. She sang Porgiamo very charmingly. It was a bit leprechaunish, but it was very charming. And we got to the end of the aria, and the pianist played the chord for the recitative, and nothing happened. She didn't sing anything. So I said to the pianist, and she still didn't say anything. So I said, it's Vieni cara Susanna, finiscimi l'istoria. And she said, oh, I don't do the recitatives, dear. I only do the numbers.
Oh, really?
And I said, come along. No, dear, I only do the numbers. I don't do the recitatives. So I went to Sir David's office, which was along the corridor, and he had a wonderful giant, so a monstrous and big lady who was very scary as his assistant. And she said, what do you want? You can't see him now, you have no appointment. And I said, well, the Countess only does the numbers. She doesn't do the recitatives. She said, I think you'd better go in. So I went in, and Sir David was sitting at his desk. He always received you writing. He was always silent. He said, what is it, lad? What is it? I said, the Countess for tonight's performance only does the numbers. She doesn't do the recitatives, Sir David. He said, well, teach them to her. Teach them to her, dear boy. What do I pay you for? I said, well, I don't think that I can teach her the recitatives by 7 o'clock tonight. And he looked up, he said, well, what do you suggest we do? And I said, Swan Lake. And we did Swan Lake, actually. We couldn't do an opera that night.
You couldn't have done the opera?
No. That was a kind of scary
How do you, when you're on top of what you want to do in a new production of this opera, how do you handle the fact that it is both it's very funny, and at the same time it's very profound? Does that pose a special challenge that you got to operate on more than one level?
I think that's the marvelous thing about it. As Christopher was saying earlier, the magic of this piece is that it transcends one. It's like the cherry orchard. You can have moments of the deepest grief and go straight into comedy. I think that's what is so marvelous about it. One of the things that you do have to be very careful about planning this show is the arrangement of where people are. In that scene we've just seen, for instance, the trio, Susanna has to be in a very good, audible place for the Count and the Countess. It's no good having her like 50 feet upstage so that she can hide but she can't be heard. Things like that. And the last act is very, very complicated to actually get right. I mean, that you really have to work out, and it took me like 2 productions before I really solved that.
Really?
Absolutely. And I think it's okay now.
I've heard that compared to Shakespeare's Twelfth Night and complication, last act complication.
Yes, but you see, in Twelfth Night you can always stop the text. The whole thing about opera is the music is relentless, so everybody's got to go boom, 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 and be at the right place at the right time. Now, that's hard.
It is said of you that you operate from the music outward. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I think that I'm more a musician than anything. I was always brought up to be a musician. The music actually tells me what to do. You know, I never have any problem. People say, oh, isn't Handel difficult, or isn't this difficult? The music is there it tells you what to do.
Now, is it through the music, not that Mozart wrote in the margins any stage directions necessarily?
If you listen to what he's written, it's very, very clear, I think.
You can tell what is indicated.
So. And you can tell, if you really analyze where people should be. For instance, in that very last finale, you know that the Countess and Susanna, because they're actually singing in thirds, you know that physically they need to be somewhere where they can actually hear each other, tune to each other, and that actually sets your drama right anyway, because they are together at that moment.
Now, the music being set, does that restrict staging in any way, or can you still be versatile?
Oh, no, I think it helps. I mean, it tells you what to do. I mean, I've always thought it was much easier than theatre, because the music's there. It just relentlessly hurls you along.
I've got the last few moments we have. This opera seems to be filled with sexual tension.
Oh, yeah.
And that line, cross and recross for the whole group all the time. Is that something we might, in this era, imagine, or was it there from the beginning?
I think sex has always been there. Let's hope it always will.
But the way we interpret the opera, is that...
Well, I think we may be freer with it now. I mean, I think we are much more sexually aware of the predicaments of the people. I mean, there's every kind of sexuality in this piece. One of the reasons why I like it so much. And I love working with actors and singers who will show their sexuality, who are not afraid to. And I think that is one of my little gifts. I do make people less timid and less shy about it. I do know that. After they've been with me for 3 or 4 days, well, they're a little bit easier. They're a little bit more comfortable being sexy, if you like. I mean, these 2 kids, I mean, I think they're absolutely marvelous. They're so natural, and I believe that they're in love, and I believe they really want to go to bed at the end of this opera, and they will.
Maybe then your input is partly at least responsible for the fact that this group gets along so well together. That's a daily reputation.
Well, Figaro is always a happy opera. I have to say, very few times I've had an unhappy experience. Once or twice, a few megalomaniacs, but generally it's an ensemble piece. And we do all get on very well, I have to say that.
Yes, it seems to be the case. Well, it's a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to the second half of the opera, the next 2 acts.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Good talking with you.
This is live from Lincoln Center now in the second intermission of this New York City Opera performance of The Marriage of Figaro. We'll return to Hugh Downs backstage for a conversation with Catherine Gambaroni, our cherubino, and Scott Bergeson, the conductor this evening, right after this short pause.
Live from Lincoln Center is underwritten by General Motors, and it's Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, Cadillac, GMC truck divisions, and GMAC. General Motors, committed to excellence.